I'll be spending a few minutes speaking about the role of tendon transfers in shoulder surgery, which are perhaps somewhat less utilized procedures, but at least in my view, still very important to know about. And rather than discuss the technical aspects of how to do each of these procedures, which would be very difficult in a 10-minute talk, this is really designed to be an overview of what options exist, how and how well they work, as well as pros and cons, so you can decide which ones you may want to investigate further and incorporate into your own practice. When we talk about massive rotator cuff tears, we all know that there's a lot of options out there that exist for treatment, from physical therapy, debridement, partial repairs, full repairs, SCRs and balloons, transfers, and arthroplasty. But what we learned in our recent systematic review, however, is that while they all have a role, in order to maximize the outcome of each procedure, we need to match the procedure to their own specific indications. Tendon transfers aren't the solution for everyone, but they can be very helpful in the right scenario. So while there are a variety of options for tendon transfer themselves, I'm really going to spend some time talking about the two most common for both posterior superior and anterior superior tears. So for the back, latissimus dorsi and lower trapezius, which I favor through an arthroscopic assisted approach, and for the front, pectoralis major and latissimus dorsi, which I favor through an open approach. But before we get into it, I think it's important to talk about some fundamentals that are present for all types of tendon transfers. So to talk about the principles that we all learned in training, the donor site should be expendable, so there's no point transferring a tendon to improve function of one task when you're causing significant dysfunction of the original. Having a straight line of pull is very helpful, as well as having a good excursion of the donor tendon, whether naturally or through extension of a graft. Synergistic transfers rehab more easily. The joint in which you're trying to improve the function of should be supple. It should have good passive range of motion and not be stiff. The donor muscle should have adequate power of 4 and above. And we've also learned that when you transfer one tendon to perform multiple functions, it doesn't do as well as when you try and transfer that one tendon to perform a single function. Generally speaking, tendon transfers are better for higher demand or activity status patients. The joints have to have good passive range of motion with minimal arthrosis, like we just talked about. And generally speaking, younger patients seem to do a little bit better because of the neuroplasticity involved with retraining the new transfer. But I think that's really a relative issue. And as we know, age in itself is really a relative measure. So let's start with posterior superior tears. The latissimus dorsi transfer, which was long held to be the gold standard for the posterior superior transfer, was initially described by Christian Gerber in the late 80s. Multiple iterations and approaches of this have been described, from open, arthroscopically assisted, all arthroscopic, lateral, beach chair, but they all really function to transfer the latissimus from the medial side of the humerus to the posterior superior aspect of the humeral head to function as both a depressor and an external rotator. And when you look at the results of this, Christian Gerber's initial reports, as well as his 10-year follow-up data, are really quite encouraging. People seem to do very well with good improvement in constant scores, as well as range of motion. But these results really haven't been identically replicated by other groups. And when you look at their work, looking at their long-term data with similar timelines, people did better. But certainly not as well, and definitely not normal, with good improvement in constant and range of motion, but failure rates up until 10 and 10+%, and only about 18 to 20% of shoulders really being pain-free at long-term follow-up, and some more recent systematic reviews found similar results. So when you look at the pros and cons of performing a lat transfer, the pros is that this is a relatively familiar procedure. More people are aware of it and perhaps have had experience and training in it. There are long-term results available, and people seem to get better, particularly in terms of their pain. Being pseudoparalytic or not having preoperative forward elevation above 90 is not really a contraindication. But we do know that patients who have better range of motion preoperatively have better range of motion postoperatively. The cons is that the functional outcomes may be more variable than the pain outcomes. It's not truly a synergistic transfer, and the vertical line of pull to make it a head depressor may actually function as function with a tenodesis effect rather than a true tendon transfer effect. Generally speaking, this procedure requires an intact subscapularis. What about the lower trapezius? So this is a procedure that is rapidly gaining in popularity since it was initially described by Bassam El-Hassan. Arthroscopic assisted approaches are now probably the most widely used. And the lower trap really functions to originally elevate, retract, and externally rotate the scapula. And the point of the transfer is to really help improve external rotation of the humeral head. And it has a similar line of pull to the infraspinatus, which is naturally trying to do this. The excursion is a little bit limited, so it does require graft extension, but with the use of the graft, it reaches the humeral head quite easily and can work quite well. When you look at the results, we don't have as long-term data for this, but the midterm data is very encouraging. People get better in terms of their range of motion with forward elevation and abduction, particularly in external rotation, which it's mainly designed for, as well as having significant improvements in their constant and subjective shoulder values. The pros of this procedure is that there is an identical line of pull to the infraspinatus, which is counter to what the latissimus dorsi transfer does. It's a synergistic transfer, and it has been shown to stabilize the humeral head in the setting of a poor subscap or deltoid. I think I would be a little bit cautious in these indications for people who may not have as much experience with this procedure, and it's not something I would do, but Dr. El-Hassan has shown it to be a useful procedure in those settings. The cons is that there is a learning curve to this. People may not have the exposure and the experience to it. It does require a graft, which can have not only cost implications, but low virulence infection implications as well. We don't have long-term results, and the best results seem to be with patients who have good preoperative forward elevation, particularly above 60 to 90 degrees. What about the front? So for anterior superior tears, for a long time, pectoralis major tears were considered to be the only option. Rockwood and Worth first described them in the late 90s, and there are multiple iterations and approaches have been described as well, with split transfers, dual head transfers above and below the coracoid. But over time, we've really accepted that the split transfer of the sternal head below the coracoid is probably the most accepted, primarily because it has a better line of pull. It more accurately reproduces the normal kinematics, and you probably have a decreased risk of musculocutaneous nerve injury with this approach as well. The results of this, I would say, have been variable at best. I think some studies have shown it to be quite promising, with other studies showing fairly poor results. Generally, patients seem to do better in terms of pain, but their results in terms of improving their forward elevation and preventing anterior subluxation is quite inconsistent. Generally speaking, patients with an intact supraspinatus do better, and we have universally poor results when we're trying to salvage in the setting of a failed subscap of a total shoulder arthroplasty. This is a more familiar anatomic area, so people and surgeons may feel more comfortable, and we have longer term outcomes, but we really don't have good functional outcomes. I think patients do seem to improve in terms of pain, but we really can't reproduce where they were preoperatively, and primarily I think it's because we can't reproduce the posterior pull of the subscapularis. The subscapularis is a posterior structure coming to the front. The pectoralis is an anterior structure. So if we're unable to reproduce that line of pull, I think it's unlikely we're going to reproduce the results that we want. There's a risk to the musculocutaneous nerve regardless of the tendon transfer route, and it really does require an intact superior cuff to function well. The latissimus dorsi has also gained popularity since it was described by Bassam in 2014. It's an attempt to more accurately reproduce that posterior line of pull. So as I said, the subscapularis comes from the back and goes to the front, as does the latissimus. So it's a synergistic transfer. And the benefit of this is that you can have multiple points of attachment based on the level of superior involvement. So based on the level of how much superior cuff is deficient, you can move the latissimus either up or down the lesser tuberosity to help improve that function. When you look at the results of this, patients have good relief in pain and a reasonable return of function. There hasn't been any real significant evidence of radial or actually nerve palsy, and there does seem to be good results regardless of the tendon transfer location, so regardless of where the superior involvement extends to. So in terms of pros and cons, this has a similar line of pull. It's a synergistic transfer. It's reliable with superior involvement. And we do have consistent outcomes thus far for both pain and function, which is a little bit contrary to some of our other examples that we've talked about before. Cons, we don't have long-term outcome studies. It's a relatively unfamiliar procedure for those surgeons who are newer to tendon transfers. And the tendon quality of the latissimus can be very inconsistent, particularly in older patients. Some of us who've had experience with latissimus transfers in the setting of reverse arthroplasty can probably attest to that. So I really try and limit my utilization of this procedure for younger patients who I am convinced probably have a more robust tendon. So I think in all, tendon transfers are viable options for very complicated pathology. The current thinking and the trends seem to be utilizing a lower trap transfer for posterior superior tears, provided they have a baseline elevation of greater than 60 degrees. Otherwise, latissimus transfer can be considered. And for anterior superior tears, pectoralis major transfers don't seem to function as well. So really, you should be looking at latissimus transfers for those indications. There is a learning curve required for performing these procedures, and they're technically demanding, but it's certainly doable. It's something that I learned in practice and not so much in training. And it really is only one tool in the massive rotator cuff toolbox. So please don't rule out other options, but it is still something definitely to consider when dealing with these complex scenarios. Thank you all very much.